This is a Level 3 lesson over Universe Step 2. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the relationship between the Sun and the Earth. And we're going to talk about the relationship in respect to the size. So the Sun is huge compared to the Earth. Very, 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 very large. The other thing that you need to know about this topic is that the Sun is always shining. It never stops. It's always shining or smashing atoms, and when that happens, it releases energy. The third thing that you need to know is that the Earth is very, very, very far away from the Sun. And that's why when we look up in the sky and we see the Sun and we see the Moon, they look similar in size to each other. But really they're not at all close in size, but the Moon is much closer to the Earth than the Sun is. Now we're going to get into the explanation between day and night. So you learn that the Sun is always shining. Or smashing atoms. And so what actually causes day and night is that the Earth is rotating or spinning on that imaginary axis. So sometimes half of the Earth is facing the Sun while the other half is not. And the half that's not facing the Sun is in darkness, and that's night. The half of the Earth that's facing the Sun is in daylight. And so as the Earth rotates, the part of Earth that's facing the Sun changes. One complete rotation about the imaginary axis takes 24 hours, and so that's why a day is 24 hours. The amount of daylight we receive changes, as you know. So here's an explanation of day and night, and we're going to break the Earth into hemispheres. So the Earth, we can break them into two different hemispheres in two different ways. So if you think about a globe or a sphere and you cut it down the equator, which is in the middle of the hemisphere, and we're cutting it parallel to the ground. So you're cutting it across the horizon, let's say. Then we break our hemisphere into northern and southern hemispheres. And northern and southern hemispheres are both, it doesn't really affect day and night. The northern and southern hemisphere will have day and night at the same time. What really affects day and night is when we break our globe into western and eastern hemispheres. And so at that time, we break the globe by meridians, or if you hold your hand perpendicular to the ground, we would break it that way. We are on the western hemisphere along with South America. Europe and Africa are on the eastern hemisphere. So when we break the world into western and eastern hemispheres, when the western hemisphere is facing the Sun, then we are having daytime. When the eastern hemisphere is facing the Sun, they are having daytime. And so as you can imagine, when the eastern hemisphere is facing the Sun, we are having night, or the western hemisphere is having nighttime. And the same is true when the western hemisphere is facing the Sun, the eastern hemisphere is having night. And so that's what causes day and night. Now we're going to get into years. So while the Earth is rotating about its axis, it's also revolving around the Sun, or orbiting around the Sun. And so one complete revolution takes 365.25 days, or rotations of the Earth. That's what causes a year, a complete revolution. You might wonder about the 0.25 times. How can it really rotate a quarter of a time? Well, we are the people that created time. The Earth has always revolved and it's always rotated, and it rotates at a certain speed. And so we try to take that speed and break it into parts that make sense to us. So 0.25 times. When we think about 0.25. I think of 4, so that's a quarter. If you times a quarter by 4, then you end up with 1. And so what happens once every 4 years is a leap year. And that's where we make up for our 0.25 rotations. So questions to consider, and you don't have to answer these. This is just, just think about these. Each year we experience, and that meaning, us in Maine, we experience something called daylight savings, where we set our clocks an hour later in the spring and earlier in the fall. Do you think that all locations in the U.S. experience daylight savings? And then would this be true for the rest of the world? Why do certain places like Alaska experience long periods of darkness and also long periods of lightness? So sometimes in Alaska, the sun never shines. Why would that be? Where are some other places that experience the same type of day-night experiences as Alaska? And you might want to look at a globe when you're thinking about these questions, because a lot of it has to do with location. Third question, and maybe I already answered this question for you. Why are there only 28 days in February? And why do we have a leap year every 4 years? Questions to consider. That was a lesson over level 3, and this was Universe Step 2.